Our first speaker for the evening is our Regional Campaign Manager, Lisa Ryan, and she's going to update us on some of the many campaigns she's been working on. Due to internet issues, we're only able to hear Lisa tonight, but she's got some wonderful things to share with us. So thanks, Lisa.
Okay. Hello to everybody. As Linda confirmed, I do a lot of the regional campaigns, which is predominantly picking up a range of things, but I have a particular interest in what goes on in rural areas across New South Wales. And I guess it's important to say early on that the campaigns that I sort of head up only happen because of the extraordinary team of people I get to collaborate with and work with, including Alex and Nadia and Barry and Roscoe, with Linda's ongoing support and the support from our board, who basically let me run riot occasionally and do what I need to do to speak up for animals. Thank you to all of the screen. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about two of the campaigns that I look after. The first one is going to be our Greyhound advocacy work, which is pretty extensive. So I'm going to give you an update on some of the work we've been doing and some of our focus. So the issues predominantly in the greyhound industry are the ongoing injuries and deaths, which are absolutely unacceptable. General animal welfare issues, including the live baiting. And some of you may be aware that in August last year, there was an exposure of live baiting in South Australia. That matter is now heading towards the Supreme Court, and very recently, in the last few days, the Supreme Court in South Australia has agreed that the footage of rabbits being torn to pieces by the greyhounds can be viewed in court. And while that is obviously a distressing thing to happen, it's also a very important thing to happen, that a court has agreed that decision makers need to see that. They have also named the 3 people charged. So that's a matter that we're going to be following importantly. They really only tightened up the live baiting laws in South Australia after the exposure in Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales back in 2015. So this case is absolutely critical. It's because the industry is so very deeply entrenched and powerful, and they have a lot of money because of their connections with gambling industry, which is massive, that our campaign has to be very broad and very multifaceted. So we cover a range of issues, and I think it's important to acknowledge the amazing work done by the team at the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds. And we're very proud and feel quite privileged that we get to collaborate with this wonderful team on a very regular basis, and we share information with them. I guess from my perspective and my colleagues' perspective, we have a very good collaboration record with a number of organisations, and that we know that for the sake of all of our animal friends, that complementing each other rather than competing with each other is where we start kicking goals for animals. And that's pretty much how we run our collaboration with the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds. So we share information, we give each other a heads up when we're about to launch something, when we've got a media story happening, and it works really well. They specialise in the greyhound issues, so the tracking of injuries, deaths, investigations, and a whole lot of specialist reports. We rely heavily on them, and we then work in sync with them to make sure that we get the best bang for our buck, basically, in terms of awareness raising and education, and getting these issues out there politically on the political front with our MPs and supporting MPs. So what we're trying to do is enhance and focus on the big issues, which includes general animal welfare, the overbreeding, and the greyhound industry at the moment is breeding 6 times more greyhounds than they can actually rehome. The whole of life tracking is a very important component of our campaign. The public money, so the money that the New South Wales government allocates to greyhound racing for a range of issues. And then our campaigns fill in the gaps. So where we specialise is getting matters raised in Parliament, getting matters raised in the media. I was confirming with my colleagues just before we started this meeting that I had a call from a journalist half an hour ago asking for myself to be interviewed tomorrow for 2 interviews on 2 separate greyhound matters, one that will be aired Monday, one that will be aired Tuesday. That sort of interest in what Animal Lib has to say is absolutely increasing on all of our campaigns. And we've had a really good run with greyhound racing, and we continue to work very hard to establish good media relationships because it's getting our message out, and it's doing what all of you and our members need us to do and what the animals need us to do. We also have a focus on greyhound tracks and the refurbished tracks because of the amount of public money that's going into these tracks. And we keep a very close eye on all of the investigations ongoing and the breaches and anything that's happening in Australia's gambling industry. Just to touch on some critical things that you may or may not be aware of, but for those that aren't aware, it's important. The Coalition have very recently, as in the last week or so, released their lethal tracks report for 2022. And just some high-level numbers for people so you understand why we need to keep working on shutting this industry down. So across Australia, 227 greyhounds were killed. 59 of those were New South Wales on-track deaths. An additional 14 greyhounds were killed off-track. So often a greyhound will have an injury and the greyhound owner or participant will say, I will take this greyhound to my own vet, and then they're killed off-track. Those off-track deaths are continuing to increase, and we suspect because they're trying to blur some of the figures that we're reporting. Across Australia, there was 10,592 injuries. 3,643 of those injuries were New South Wales. Across the 2022 period, 29 greyhounds were injured every single day. So when you contemplate that injury rate and the pain and suffering the greyhounds, you understand that this really is an animal welfare crisis. 78% of the greyhounds that are killed on Australian tracks suffer broken legs. That is the primary, they suffer all sorts of injuries, but that is the primary injury that they suffer as they're going around curves, colliding with each other, or at the end in what they call the catching pen. And while if any of us had a dog that had a broken leg, we would do the utmost to try and get that injury tended to with emergency surgery or an amputation. And there are many greyhounds that survive very happily on 3 legs, but this industry continues to kill them. And the majority of them at the moment are being killed on track by vets that are being paid by the industry to do just that. So those figures are distressing, but those are the figures that encourage us to continue doing what we're doing. Very recently, there was an Australia-wide survey that was undertaken by Grade 2K USA Worldwide and the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds. And important to say that Animal Liberation, through myself, are also liaising with Grade 2K USA Worldwide for the simple fact that they have shut down almost every track in the US. They are now very close to the end of the campaign in America, and they are now moving their support to us and working with the coalition and with Animal Liberation and other stakeholders. So these issues with greyhounds are global issues, and the more we collaborate with good partners, the closer we're getting to shutting it down permanently in New South Wales and across Australia. The survey that was undertaken, and it was a very high-tech, very professional survey, came back with a number of results. The most important one to us at the moment is that 69% of Australians surveyed confirmed that they oppose the taxpayer funding of the racing industry, and that's one of our big issues at the moment. We also know that the industry is continuing to breed 6 times the amount they can rehoming. So the cost of living crisis and the overflow in our pounds and shelters at the moment is being made significantly worse because of their irresponsible and reckless overbreeding, because of course only so many dogs even make it to the track or have the running capacity to be a racing dog and earn money for the participants. In terms of government money, New South Wales government money over the last 3 years, we, to the best of our ability, and government is not particularly transparent with the budget amounts that go to this industry, but in the last 3 years, we've calculated just over $100 million of taxpayer money has gone directly to Greyhound Racing New South Wales. 30 million of that is to improve the track safety of a number of tracks, so refurbishment of tracks. That money, if you consider what $100 million could do for animal welfare generally, rather than going to prop up the greyhound industry, it is quite absurd. So that's an issue that we are hoping will resonate with the new Labor government in New South Wales, and we're doing a lot of work in the background to get these points across. In terms of greyhound funding to their own rescue group known as GAP New South Wales, in the last 3 years they've been allocated $14.6 million to rescue greyhounds, but the results by our analysis confirm that in spite of this enormous amount of money to this one rescue organisation, GAP New South Wales have rehomed 886 dogs, greyhounds, compared with 1,185 rehomed by volunteer, unfunded rescue groups across the state. So that's a pretty damning figure, that the rescue groups that we support and the volunteer groups are rehoming more greyhounds on the smell of an oily rag compared to the industry's own rescue group that have had $14.6 million. The money, when you go through these figures, the money that this industry gets is just so offensive, which is what spurs me on to keep working really, really hard on this campaign. We also know that greyhounds are continuing to end up in New South Wales pounds and shelters, even though they're not supposed to. And I know that because probably once a fortnight, I send an image and details of a greyhound in a pound to GWIC, as do the coalition, and we are holding them to account, saying, get these greyhounds out. We need to keep these shelters free for all of the other dogs. The industry itself, why their rescue facility is still sitting under Greyhound Racing New South Wales rather than GWIC is another issue that we are following. In terms of what we're doing, apart from monitoring all of those issues and everything that's happening with greyhound racing, not just in New South Wales, but Australia-wide and around the world, we need to stay on top of all of these tracks. We have been running a number of campaigns, and it's only because of our incredible supporters and members that we're kicking goals with these. So the first one that some of you would be familiar with is our opposition to a new greyhound death track in the Tweed area, in the Northern Rivers area. We pushed them so hard that they withdrew their development application, but we knew that was only a temporary measure. At the moment, they are working in the background to resubmit. We are expecting that this time around it's going to be resubmitted as a state significant project. We do have a petition going opposing that Tweed track. So if you haven't signed that, and perhaps Nadia, you can put that up in the chat, we would encourage you to sign it. We are going to continue making lots and lots of noise to stop this track ever getting past the early stages. But if it becomes a state significant project, the fight will be more difficult. But as you all saw very recently, we had a huge win with the refusal of the Musselbrook rehoming or warehousing of discarded greyhounds. That was a massive win for not just the greyhounds concerned, but for us and Animal Liberation. And we worked really hard for months, but we also had, you know, close to 2,000 incredible members and supporters that lodge submissions using our submission guide. So it's you that deserves, you know, gold stars, and we can't thank you enough for that support. That's what made the difference in this case, the overwhelming public interest and opposition to the greyhound industry. With the Wentworth Park track, which is very important to greyhound racing, we don't know what's next. We know it's going to be shut down and that land is being reallocated. All I can tell you at the moment is we are tracking that very, very closely. I watch absolutely every move Greyhound Racing New South Wales makes. And what I find out, I share with the coalition, and what they find out, they share with me. So we very much are staying one step ahead of these people every day of the week. There's been very recent media about the Bulli track, and that the council has come out and said the greyhound racing will not continue. That is a good result. However, what I would confirm is that greyhound racing for some time have had plans to consolidate all their racing into a whiz-bang, very large new track at Dapto. And we are at the moment working on a new campaign to oppose the Dapto Dogs track, which will run along similar lines to our Tweed track. Just because I'm giving you a lot of information and there's a lot to absorb, just to let everybody know that has an interest in greyhounds, we will be sending out a greyhound specific email to our members who've signed our greyhound related petitions or lodged a submission very soon. And we will include the links to these new web pages we're working on at the moment. How you can support and engage is signing our petitions, is sharing our posts, is staying across our social media platforms, and we have a number of them that Nadia manages beautifully for us. And if you have a capacity to make a donation to Animal Liberation, I would encourage you to do that. If we can raise sufficient money, we can get billboards up to stop these tracks. We can get billboards up and we can get ads in papers. We can do all sorts of things. So that's probably it for Greyhound. I'm going to sort of jump into our Pound and Shelter campaign now, which is something that I've been working on for probably 30 years. of all the areas I've covered, puppy farms and pound and shelter are the ones I'm probably most knowledgeable about and very passionate about. Some of you may have signed our pound and shelter campaign and our 15-point plan. That plan is the result of 30 years of my knowledge and work and what needs to happen to get progressive reform. New South Wales, all of the states and territories across Australia have pretty bad pound programs, but New South Wales, without a shred of doubt, is absolutely the worst. It is a completely broken system where it's failing not only the animals, but it's failing the communities and the public who pay for these facilities. These are publicly funded facilities. And before I continue, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our exposure of the Burke Council dog and puppy shooting, but we actually have a very important investigation in the process at the moment, and I would ask you all to stay across our social media, and it will probably be the latter part of the weekend. We will have some posts and some media going up about some distressing allegations that I have formalised in formal complaints to the RSPCA and other authorities about what I am alleging on behalf of Animal Liberation is heinous animal cruelty towards dogs and puppies in a New South Wales Council pound. It is very, very important that we get your support and public support across this. So please, I can't at this stage mention it, but it will hopefully be coming out towards the latter part of the weekend, and we will be putting out asks for our members and supporters to get behind us so that we can continue progressing. The system at the moment is very entrenched. It's built on a system of rubbish disposal for animals. So they come in, if they can't offload them to rescue groups, they will kill them. It's wasting public money, huge amounts of public money, and the information that is going out from the New South Wales Office of Local Government to the public is highly misleading. Being killed in a pound or shelter is the leading cause of companion animal deaths. That is a fact, and I'm going to show you some of where we obtain this information. Some of the pounds I have seen are worse than some of the puppy farms I have been into in terms of the suffering of cats, kittens, dogs, and puppies. But remember, in a lot of pounds, particularly our rural pounds, they are impounding goats, pigs, chickens, ducks, horses, all sorts of animals. So our pound and shelter campaign is certainly about the cats and dogs because they make up most of the impounded animals, but it's absolutely about all the farm animals and any other animals that end up in the pound. We don't discriminate at Animal Liberation. It is about all of the vulnerable animals. In terms of our focus and the death rates, while the death rates have certainly been coming down over the last few years. So, for example, in 2020 to 2021, there was a total of, and I'm just referring to dog statistics to example this, we had 23,621 dogs enter New South Wales pounds. 11,000 odd were released back to the owners who went looking for their dogs. 6,700 went to rescue groups. The councils only managed to sell, so adopt out directly, 2,800, and they then basically killed the rest. Now, I'm going to bring up another screen showing how they record these statistics and where you can access these statistics for your own local count, because knowledge is power. And the more people that know what's going on in their own area, the more people we can get coming to us and saying, I want to run a campaign in my area. How can you help us? And we will absolutely help you. What's going on in council pounds is absolutely unacceptable. And while we certainly do have some good council pounds and shelters, Shoalhaven Council is an example, I would say, is an excellent example, but some of them are utterly appalling. The lack of compliant facilities and practices is appalling. These matters have been raised certainly by me, and I know others in New South Wales for 20 years, pretty much falling on deaf ears. We are now in the phase of a new government. We are hoping we can start again with a more open and transparent engagement with government and the ministers. And that's one of the things I'm working on in the background at the moment. The reporting is very limited and very misleading. Our code of practice for council pounds is 27 years old. And has never been reviewed, and it is not a standalone code of practice. It also covers veterinary clinics and boarding clinics, so it's not fit for purpose in our opinion. There has never been a strong leadership or progressive reforms. Pound and shelter animals have been overlooked time and time and time again. And there is no oversight. While we have a New South Wales Office of Local Government, they don't do anything. If there is a cruelty complaint with a council pound, it still needs to go to RSPCA. I have lodged numerous complaints about council pounds in particular over the years. There has never been any charges of cruelty levelled against people, in spite of some pretty overwhelming evidence. That needs to change too. These animals need us to speak for them loudly. In terms of the legislation, and I'm not going to go through or discuss the legislation, but this list here, these are all the acts and codes of practice that are designed and should be protecting companion animals, including those in pounds. All of them are failing. Every single one. The most recent one is the Companion Animals Amendment Rehoming Animals Act. So that came in last year. So that was the act brought in by the Animal Justice Party, and the concept and the intent is absolutely admirable. So this was about stopping convenience killing. However, it's going to be 1, possibly 2 years before we know whether or not that's working. And our posts that will be coming out on the late work weekend will confirm for everybody that it's not working. And it's not because the act that was brought in is badly designed or the intention's wrong. Where it's failing is where animal welfare often fails, in the lack of monitoring and the lack of enforcement. We've also had a past inquiry way back in 2012, so 11 years ago, and that was the Companion Animals Task Force. It was a talk fest, and they still haven't implemented all the recommendations, and really, for the animals in the pounds, nothing has changed. They have a Animal Welfare Advisory Council that does nothing for companion animals in pounds. We have a responsible pet ownership reference group that was pulled together by one of the many ministers for local government. We don't even know if that is still operating. I have contacted the Office of Local Government and the new Labor minister to find out what is happening with that group, and to try and I will continue to push and push and push to see if Animal Liberation can get a seat on that group, because at the moment, nothing's happening. And I'm not even sure this group still operates. It should operate. After we exposed and the media went global, the shooting by Burke Council of a mother dog and very newborn babies, and they were literally not even 48 hours old, so really, really tiny puppies. The New South Wales government at the time did what was pretty predictable. The first was that the minister, the most recent former minister, Wendy Tuckerman, organised a New South Wales Office of Local Government review into rehoming of companion animals. Now, we were not invited to participate in that review, but as my colleagues will testify, I don't take no for an answer ever. And we nuzzled in, or literally I bulldozed my way into that. And Alex Vince, my colleague, and I sat in some online meetings, and we then looked at what they were thinking of doing. We realised very early on this was, a bit of a pretend review. They weren't going to look at the non-compliant facilities. They weren't going to consider no-kill. They weren't going to consider trap, neuter, release. This was about making Wendy Tuckerman, the then minister, look like she was doing something for the sake of doing something, because everybody was so horrified that we were still shooting dogs in pounds. And just for everybody's knowledge, in spite of that media story being reproduced in every country around the world and just about every publication across Australia, shooting animals in pounds is still legal in New South Wales. So we're still fighting that. We are not going to back away from that. And I'm actually confident that we may get that changed this year with some supporting MPs. The other thing, so they did this review. It was also, apart from being very narrow in scope, it was limited. We have, 200 plus councils in New South Wales. They only invited about a dozen from memory to participate, and Animal Lib only got a seat at the table because we insisted we be there. But at the time, it was so important to myself and to my colleagues that, again, we had a template guide set up, and we had, I think it was about 900 of our members sent submissions into this. Now, the draft reports come out and it's predictably disappointing. We now have a new government. I don't know how much this cost the taxpayer. The report is disappointing. It's narrow. It doesn't address all of the issues. It's another waste of taxpayer money, and I'm expecting it'll probably never see the light of day. But for people that want to read it, it is out there. If you can't find it, email us at Animal Lib and I will send it to you. And you can, and we're happy to share our submission with you as well. The other thing, and this was fairly recent, and this has been one of our asks, was similar to Victoria. We wanted to have annual grants for rescue groups, volunteer rescue groups. So very recently, or before the election, again, Wendy Tuckerman announced $5 million as grants for endorsed rescue groups, and that each rescue group could apply for up to $100,000 each. Now, that sounds good in practice, and we're happy and we support that. But this is not annual funding. These rescue groups need annual funding. This was a once-off to buy votes before the election. The other thing that concerns us is it does not include all rescue groups. It only includes rescue groups for cats and dogs, not those. We have a number of rescue groups that are rescuing and specific to wildlife, farm animals. They've basically been left out of the table. So that's another issue we're pursuing with the new minister. And I can tell you the new ministers have had lots of emails from me already. In terms of what we're doing and what is most important to us, it is continuing to expose non-compliant pounds and pounds that are causing suffering and cruelty to animals, and doing the wrong thing by the communities they're supposed to represent. So every council that does the wrong thing, we are going to continue to expose. Our campaign is continuing to run. Our petition, we do have many thousands of signatures. We need to get lots more. So we're going to be pushing that and continuing to push that. The primary aim of our campaign is to ensure we get a New South Wales state government inquiry into the management and the lack of compliance with New South Wales Council pounds and shelters, so including RSPCA and Animal Welfare League as well, so that it's fair and across the board. Our view is that unless all the issues are on the table, you can never get progressive reforms and solutions. So our big goal, our high goal, is getting an inquiry, and we certainly won't be backing away from that. I referred earlier to the annual reporting. So every year, every single council has to submit statistics for all the dogs, all the cats that go into their pound. These are available. They're listed alphabetically. It shows how many went in, how many left, how many were sold, how many were killed because they were infants, so babies, because they're too lazy to hand feed them or give them to a rescue group. Very important, people are aware that these statistics are available. The big issue we have at the moment is that the most recent statistics for 2021 to 2022 still have not been published. And we are going back and forth with the Office of Local Government in terms of where are they, but these statistics are available. You can access them, anybody can access them. The rescue and rehoming groups are the heroes in this space. These are the people that dedicate their personal time, their personal money in saving the lives of animals. These are the people we need to support. And while the government will continue to say that the kill rates have decreased because of work they're doing, that is not the case. The kill rates have decreased because the private volunteer rescue groups are doing all the heavy lifting. We're going to continue holding the government to account. We're going to continue holding the responsible agencies to account, and I mean RSPCA, Animal Welfare League, police, anytime we report cruelty in a pound. Again, similar to our Greyhound campaign, you can support by getting active, engaging with us, subscribing to our email lists, and taking up the actions that we ask you to do. I've probably gone well over time, as I often do. Happy to take any questions. If anybody has a question you don't want to raise now, please email us at Animal Lib, and I will provide you with any information. But thank you all for your incredible support, for getting behind all our actions, and subscribe and stay up to date with our campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was extraordinary. It's just amazing. I think we've all mentioned that you must get 10 minutes sleep per day or night. And Nadia, I just want to thank you for being so preemptive with getting those links up. So if anyone wants to grab those links in the chat box for further information, please do.